Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Game Development Log video diary, and this week I have got a veritable smorgasbord of updates to show you. So first off this week I finished off the entity editor by adding a light component which you can add to entities to allow them to emit light. There are some settings for the colour and the attenuation of the light, and you can also set the exact position on the entity from which the light is emitted. So I used this to make the torch entity, which as you can see uses all of the possible components. It's got the fire particle effect, a collision box, the light component, and a sound emitter and looper to allow it to make this crackling fire sound when you get close to it. And here you can see that same torch loaded up into the game, with all of those components working as they should. Also this week I wanted to see what would happen if I filled the whole world with water. Not really relevant to what I should have been doing this week, but it was kind of fun. I was also testing its performance, and the frame rate stayed pretty steady as well, so I should be able to have seas and oceans in the game without the frame rate taking a dive. As well as that, I also fixed a very old problem in my game, which is ugly texture seams like this one here. Until this week, I'd never actually programmed a proper OBJ parser that could handle texture seams, which is somewhat shameful. I always had two options: either I could leave the texture seam in and get this ugly stretching going on, or I could split all the edges along the texture seam in Blender so that the texture mapped properly, but the normals got messed up and made the lighting look weird. But finally I fixed that this week and created a new parser that can properly handle the seams. On a similar topic, I also updated my mesh simplification algorithm for my level of detail stuff so that it also could handle texture seams. So I've got the Blender monkey here looking pretty horrific, with a texture seam right around the centre of its head. This is what the original model looks like, but when simplified, the old algorithm didn't pay any attention to the seams, and the monkey would get obliterated. I have now updated the algorithm to recognise texture seams, so that it leaves them unsimplified, while still simplifying the rest of this demonic monkey. So, using these two new features, I started work on the next dev tool for the game, which is this model file creator / level of detail editor. I'm only about half done with this tool, so there are still a lot of things missing, but I'll show you what I've done so far. Here you can choose an OBJ file freshly exported from Blender, and it loads it up using the new parser, and also converts it into a more compressed file format. Then you've got some information about the model here, and you can change the size of the model. Over here I'm going to add some settings for the preview, but at the moment it just tells you what distance the camera is from the object and which level of detail it should be being rendered at. Over here on this side of the screen you can set the simplified model at each level of detail. So you click here to add a new level of detail, choose which level of detail you want to create, choose the error margin for the mesh simplification algorithm, and then simplify the mesh by clicking calculate. You can see the simplified model here in the preview, and this mesh now only has 408 triangles compared to the original 626. If you're not happy with the simplification, then you can change the error margin and do it again, and when you're satisfied you can click confirm, which encodes this simplified mesh into the model's data file. So now in the preview you see that the model swaps to the simplified version that we just created when we move the camera far enough back. I'm also going to add a list in this panel here to show all the levels of detail that have been created so that you can edit or remove them, but I'll do that at the weekend. And that is it for this week. Next week I'll finish off that level of detail editor tool, and then I'll start work on the world editor, which I am looking forward to doing immensely. Don't forget to send me an email if you'd be interested in using the development tools to help create content for my game once I finish programming them. And do stay in touch via my Facebook, Twitter and IndieDB pages, links are in the description. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this video, do subscribe if you haven't already, have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.